Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Harold Hughes, founder and CEO of Bandwagon, a South Carolina-based live experience technology company. Harold, I'm so excited to chat with you, as I mentioned before the show, not only to learn about your background and your experience, but what you're working on within the blockchain space and this whole live experience. Just kind of ecosystem seems to have changed pre-COVID, even during and after. It seems like a lot of people are figuring out not only new ways to have and offer experiences, but how to offer the current experiences at a more just like whether it's an intensified experience or intimate and kind of using technology to enable that. So excited to go into so many different topics here. But before we do that, what were you doing before you started the company?
Before I started Bandwagon, I was actually in corporate America. After college, I went to Clemson University where I studied economics, political science. I went into corporate America where I started inside sales in like 2007. I made a whopping $32,000 a year. And then I moved up from inside sales to product management and ultimately into business development. And so I spent just over a decade there before deciding to make the entrepreneurial leap.
I love that. It's so fascinating. A lot of founders kind of come from a sales background and really kind of this like not ecosystem, but it's almost like these tools and skills to build those relationships with customers, with clients seems to translate super well, especially to the startup space. And I'm curious in that transition, when you were thinking about becoming a founder, not only what inspired you to start the company, but what did that previous experience prepare you for in terms of the entrepreneurial journey and being a founder and starting to start building a product, gain traction, build a story, all that stuff that we think about?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, the biggest thing was this is really a people business. So no matter what you think about, everyone talks about product market fit. Everyone talks about investor relations and being able to raise cash. All of those things come down to people, whether it's understanding your customer, being able to convince people to work for you at below market prices early on, as well
Yeah.
as being able to gain the trust and support of investors. And so being a person that was managed, and I had good managers and I had not so good managers. I
Yeah.
understood the type of manager I wanted to be. And then also seeing how organizations ran. I actually worked for a publicly traded company. And so
Yeah.
it was interesting because you'd see some of the things that was happening inside the organization, but Wall Street wasn't necessarily giving us credit for that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was always really interesting to see how important information and sharing it and being transparent was as a leader. So coming into running my own company, I wanted to be a certain type of a leader. I knew I wanted to have a certain type of organization. I wanted to be extra communicative with my investors and with my team.
Yeah.
And so those are the types of things I really brought in to starting the company. Aside from that, it's just a love for how technology can help enhance and enrich our lives and bring people together.
Yeah, it's so fascinating you talk about the information sharing piece because I feel like that's what a lot of not only like you feel the attachment to the work, but you feel that acknowledgement. It kind of builds and reinforces this culture piece. And how are you able to do that for other founders out there who maybe are focusing on the other things you said a lot, but maybe need to lean in more to their culture, the message, the information sharing? How have you been able to do that structurally in your company to be able to foster a strong, cohesive culture and a direction, honestly, in the right direction?
So when the pandemic started in March of 2020, one of the things I made sure to tell my team, so I gave everyone a week off. I gave everyone $250 and said, hey, go get something to make being at home more comfortable. We literally had just signed a multi-year lease in February of 2020. So we had tricked out our office and had these like great chairs and great desks and lighting and meeting rooms. And then in March, just a month later, we knew we weren't going to be in there and we didn't know how long we weren't going to be in there. So we said, okay, well, let's figure out a way to make people feel more comfortable. So we gave everybody a little money and a little time. And from there, I said, look, I can't provide you comfort. I can't even necessarily provide a solution right now. But what I can do and what I'll always do is provide you information. And from that, you can do whatever you need to with that information. And so for us, it's always been really important to make sure that we equip our employees, our team members, our investors with information so that they can make decisions for the best of their household, for the best of their portfolios. And normally when you do that, they're going to make decisions that are best for the company.
Yeah, but it's interesting, and I haven't asked a lot of founders this question, but how are you able to communicate all with those different channels and know what is going to be of high value information? Because we think about a lot of the messaging nowadays, even when talking to investors and others or mentors or even those potential clients in our ecosystem, the huge thing is like value and adding value but what is it? Is it a certain type of metrics that you're hitting? Is it growth predictions and then kind of results and findings and things like that? If I'm a founder wanting to keep people engaged and involved with what's going on in my business, what should I think about in terms of communicating in terms of the value of the business overall? What's been successful for you? And also, what have you learned from what hasn't been successful?
Yeah. So internally, so we're a distributed organization. While we do have our headquarters in Greenville, South Carolina, and that's where our engineering team is based. I'm a remote CEO. I live in Austin. Our head of product and design lives in LA. Our CFO lives in Maryland. And so being able to make sure that we have consistent communication between the various departments, biz ops and the technical team is really important. And so the number one thing we do is we start every week with a weekly stand up where everyone understands what's being built with the product. So the engineering team is able to communicate what the intentions of deliverables are for that week. We do a 1 week sprints. And then on the biz ops side, we break down what the objectives are. Sometimes that's following up with customers. Sometimes that's supporting a customer launch. Sometimes that's investor relations. And then at the end of each week, we have a weekly show and tell where you need to show what you have done. If it is a customer activation, you are showing a website and metrics. If you're building something, you're showing a new feature that's in testing or staging or maybe even production. And so we do really lean into those. That really helps internally. For investors and other folks externally, we try to be really consistent. My investor update comes out every even month of the year. So April all the way to December. So we do it every 60-ish days. And that's because we're B2B2C. And so things move a little slower. It'd be one thing if we were B2C and we sign 6 customers today and then 8 tomorrow, then you want to be faster with your communication cycle. So because we're B2B2C, we tend to do it about every 60 days. And that allows our investors to know on a predictable cadence when we're going to communicate with them, what type of information we cover. So all of our updates always have company update, product update, business updates. That may be signing customers. And then we also have fundraising and financial updates. So how much money do we have in the bank? And do we need to fundraise, or what's our burn rate? And so all of that stuff is in every single update, including an ask, and then just a general snapshot of what the company is. Because as companies pivot, it is really important to make sure that all of your investors can speak very intelligently about your company as they're talking to their peers about what you do. And so those are the types of things that I've learned so far. I have learned some things that don't necessarily work that well is email. So our company doesn't use email internally. So literally, if you're communicating inside our 4 walls, you have to use Slack. Like you are not to email each other because emails get lost and it's hard to connect. So we do Slack as far as like the public channels. That's something we learned early on.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's impressive to hear the maturity that you're operating at, and for a few different ways, not only with the structure of the communication, but also in terms of the updates and the transparency. I think a lot of founders struggle with being extremely transparent, whether it's attaching their ego to it or maybe even just like holding those outcomes a little bit too emotionally impactful. But when you're able to operate in transparency, you're not only allowing for more interjection, I think, of other insights or other advice, or you think about the mentoring, but you're also kind of opening the gate to a lot more opportunity. So it's impressive to see what you're operating at. But shifting back to the company and Bandwagon, what inspired you to, you're working in corporate America, you're doing business development, you're building all these relationships, and what made you shift to live experiences? What got you excited about this? And tell us how the product was, what we should expect from a user standpoint, and also what's impressive about the technology that you're building it within.
Yeah. So when we got started, I leaned on a lot of the experiences that I had as a fan. I remember going to Clemson, and one of my first days there, I was raised in South Carolina. And so I know how segregated the country is Sunday mornings, from race to religion to socioeconomic status. And so one of the things we think about is the fact when it comes to technology, you can use it to either divide people or you can use it to bring people together. And we've been fortunate to be able to build a company that uses technology to bring people together. And so when I look back at some of my experiences that were happening at college football games, I realized that despite Sunday mornings having us being separate, on a Saturday afternoon in the South, we were all hugging and high-fiving, and that was really cool. And so I wanted to figure out how to do more of that. And so when we started building Bandwagon, our North Star was always about how do we create community using technology. And so leaning into these affinity groups, like a fan club, fan of Clemson, a fan of Ariana Grande, a fan of Beyonce, that is going to bring people together. And so we've been building these products. And so when the pandemic started, we were like, we've got all this expertise in blockchain. What are we going to do? And so we leaned into how do you create community virtually and digitally? And so we started learning about NFTs. And so we started seeing these massive projects where it's like, oh, you can buy one of 10,000 apes for Bored Ape Yacht Club. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then we got to NBA Top Shot and it was like, you can buy one of 35,000 editions of a layup. And I
Wow.
was like, man, that doesn't seem all that like interesting to have one of 35,000 copies of a layup.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if we could change it to where we could have the perspective of 35,000 people capturing that layup? We're all operating with these supercomputers, these DSLRs in our pockets, and we're already capturing the content. What if we asked fans for that content? And so in 2021, we commercialized our product called Poet. It stands for Proof of Experience Tokens. And we trademarked the phrase Proof of Experience, where the concept was really straightforward. We've all heard of Getty Images.
Yeah.
What if, as an artist or an entertainer, you could encourage and incentivize your fans to submit pictures of you, literally transferring the IP of you to do whatever it is you want with it. And so you're basically creating this little army of photographers from your fan base. And so that was the first iteration. It was like, okay, user-generated content and decentralizing a Getty Images type product. But then we said, well, proof of experience isn't just pictures. What are the other things that fans are doing on a regular basis? Well, is it streaming? So now we started looking at how do we use streaming companies and their APIs to reward fans for streaming habits? At the end of the year, we all get this, you're in the top 1% of Bad Bunny listening, but that's it. Like it doesn't really do anything after that. And so we started thinking about, well, why is that? And really it really became clear. We thought about it and said, well, these are siloed.
Yeah.
You've got some fans on Ticketmaster, you've got some fans on Spotify, you've got some fans on social media. And as the artist or the brand or the entertainer, there was no one place that you could just galvanize your fan club. And so we said, we're going to build it. And so Bandwagon started building our newest product that we'll be releasing later this year called Fan Club, where we are basically allowing every artist, entertainer, brand, athlete to be able to create virtual fan clubs. So yes, the biggest of artists are going to have tons of fans, but before they were that big, they were an up and coming artist. And so we want to see a lot of those folks who were saying, hey, I was a day one fan from when this person became really big. The story I like to tell is my brother listens to a lot of music, my brother Steve, but I'm more of like a top 40 guy. Like if it's on the radio, I'll hear it. If it's presented to me, I'll hear it, but I'm not going to dig through the crates to find it. But he will. And so when Nipsey Hussle died, he'd been telling us like, yo, this guy Nip is going to be the one. And so when Nipsey Hussle died, so many fans discovered his music. Well, the thing about that was the Nipsey Hussle fans that had been there were like, whoa. Where are y'all coming from? Y'all weren't here when. And fans are like, well, territorial. And so when you look at it, it's like, well, how do fans prove that they were day one fans? Like everyone says they went to Woodstock, but no one can prove it. And so the idea here is like, how do you create a vehicle or a tool, or in this case, a reward system for fans to be able to raise their hand and identify themselves as a day one fan and be able to follow themselves and see that journey for themselves. We want to capture all of that digitally. And thanks to the blockchain, thanks to NFTs, we're not worrying about what crypto costs. We're not worrying about gas fees and wallets. We're making it really simple for the fan to be engaged and connect with their favorite artist, entertainer, and brand.
Amazing. So thinking about the proof of concept model, or proof of experience model, pardon me, this seems such a fascinating concept, especially if you think about the possibility to continue fostering this fan club. And what kind of, just out of curiosity, what kind of ways are fans and their artists or individuals that they're following, how are they connecting? What are some interesting ways that you've seen? Maybe it's new activities that they're doing, new offerings, and how are they continuing to connect with their audience? And also, I'll start with that question. I have some follow-up questions for you.
Yeah. So normally when you go to a sporting event, for example, they have these like posters that they printed thousands of. And so everyone leaves with the exact same poster. And at the same time, when you get to the stadium or the arena, there's the Jumbotron and everyone's trying to be seen on the Jumbotron, whether it's dancing or something like that. So we do understand there's two things. One, that the team, the athlete, the brand wants to give you something that you'll keep. But also there's this desire to be seen and desire to be connected to your favorite team by that Jumbotron experience. And so one of our customers, Will Shipley, he's a college athlete. He set up with us to where he wanted to capture what the fans' journey was, also what the world looked like from the fans' perspective on game day. And so that meant asking fans to submit user-generated content on his website, willshipley.com. And you'd go there, you'd submit the pictures. And then from there, he used our technology, his team, put together these digital mosaics, which in that you could imagine us creating like a canvas of all of the fans' pictures from that game. And so it does two things. One, it proves you were there. You had to have been participating in some way. Now, of course, you could submit it like virtually, but the goal was you were engaged. Whether you were there or not, you were connected. So it brings you to that proof that you were watching the game. The second piece was, unlike getting that one of 10,000 version of the poster, you are now part of this art. You are now part of this digital experience. If you did not submit your picture to it, it would look like a different picture. And so for that, it actually made it a unique collectible that fans wanted to have because they saw themselves in it in the same way they saw themselves on the Jumbotron. So we had a higher rate of collectible activity with those types of deliverables with Will. We did the same thing with Pepsi and Life Water. We did it with Brad Stuver, who's an MLS player. And so that was a really new and unique use case of taking something that fans are already doing, pictures and videos at games, asking them to submit them to their favorite athlete. In this case, it was Will. And then from there, Will could do whatever he wanted. He would shout some of the folks out on social media and say, this is my favorite picture. It's Ann from Kentucky, and be able to say, so you get that shout out, but also you get that digital collectible that he was able to create thanks to the help of fans. So that's one of the new things we're seeing more of is dynamic engagement opportunities from these brands, these entertainers, really connecting in a really bi-directional relationship with their fans.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the fans' like ideal experience, even for myself and people I'm a fan of. It's the recognition, right? I appreciate the things you're doing, and I recognize them as a fan, and you recognize me, and the impact that I think not only the group of fans, but if we think about voting, for instance, right? It's the culmination of all those votes that essentially validate a certain idea or topic or individual. And thinking about just the technology behind it, how are you able to take that asset or however you would say it, but that information, whether it's a video or a photo, and how do you track that, or how do you verify that, or create that proof of experience? Are you time stamping it? Do you create an NFT? Describe the mechanics behind how you're able to actually attribute and even put that on chain.
Yeah, for sure. So we made our product Poet, which stands for Proof of Experience Token. In November of 2021 is when we first released it. The website's poe.xyz, and it is the easiest and fastest way for anyone to create it. So in the same way that you would upload a picture somewhere, you can upload a title, you can have a description, and you upload the picture as long as it's less than 10 megabytes. And then you click create. And what that's doing is it's storing the title, the picture, and the description all on IPFS, which is the blockchain distributed database. And in doing so, you're actually able to now have a copy of that wherever you go because it lives on that blockchain forever. Today, we're using the Polygon blockchain. We're super excited about that. Polygon is supporting brands as big as Starbucks and Disney. And so their business development team, led by Ryan and all the folks that they're doing over there, all the folks that are working hard over there, it's been fantastic. And so being able to help folks do that has been really, really great. And then from submitting that as an NFT, you using our traditional terms and conditions and license use, say, hey, by submitting this NFT, you actually are transferring the IP to this brand or to this athlete or artist. And so it's incredibly simple.
Yeah. And thinking about just like the ownership of like the collectibles and the whole kind of dynamic is typically, I mean, I remember I had uncles who were big Elvis fans, and there was big launches and these editions that they would have seasonally for collectibles and all this. But if we think about the mechanics of it, it's owned by a company that's not necessarily, it's associated with the artist, but their business incentives are different. How does this change the dynamic of aligning an artist or an individual's incentives in terms of their likeness and the music, their propensity to keep their fans cohesive? How does that change the dynamic when it's not siloed by a company that's, say, running their likeness or gaining outcomes from the likeness or selling things on that? How does that change the dynamic for artists to not only own the rights and material, but also expand their fanship and their fandom?
Yeah. So when you think about it, it's one of these things that's actually really interesting when you think about how media and social media specifically works, especially the ones with ad-based business models. So if you take Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, the biggest Instagram star on the planet, he has hundreds of millions of fans who've literally opted in to seeing his content. So that means that they specifically say that they want to see his content whenever he posts it. So you would think that naturally Instagram would say, oh, great, let's send you this at the top of your feed, but they don't. And it makes sense because if they let Cristiano Ronaldo do that and show his content to a follower he has, that would break their ad model because they charge businesses a lot of money to get in front of them. So for us, we want to figure out like, well, how do you make sure that you're actually getting the content you're asking for? So that's step one. The other part is that due to the siloed nature of how these fan clubs and fan bases exist, You've got some on Ticketmaster, some on Twitter, some on Instagram. And so when you think about it, and then some of the names are different. So one of them could be like the real Cristiano on Twitter, and on Instagram it would be Cristiano and all these. And so you think about how that creates a lot of friction for the fan. And so what we want to do was think through how you provide a tool that helps them better manage their engagement. And so I do think that that's going to lead to more brands wanting to be aligned more closely to that artist or the entertainer, because then they're going to have a more round picture of who their fans are. They're going to have a better understanding of who's showing up to events and who's streaming and who's taking pictures and who's buying merch. And so when you have that type of a round snapshot of then you'll be able to go directly to brands and say, hey, look, this is the type of behavior you want to reward or want to be aligned with. These are the types of activities we can do together. So I think that it unlocks a lot of value for those fans as well as the entertainers that we sign going forward.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how it changes the ability for a fan to actually influence what their artist or the individual that they're attached to or excited about and a viewer of and a fan of overall, how that changes their ability to influence them. Have you seen that yet? Or is that still kind of like to come with the growing fanship? Have fans really driven an artist to change their mind or go in a different perspective? Have you seen that yet? Or is that kind of just like, is that me dreaming or fantasizing about a potential opportunity?
No, I don't think that's far off either. I mean, we haven't seen it yet, but one of the things we think of, take philanthropy for example. One of my favorite brands on the planet is a company called Partake Foods. They have a really, really big and strong philanthropic vision. And so you could imagine them using our technology to say, hey, we want to reward consumers and customers who buy from our website directly. If you buy from our website, we're going to give you 1 point for every dollar you spend. And at the end of each year, we are going to give you all those points and you get to allocate them to the nonprofit in your community that you want to see us support. So we will give you a list of nonprofits that we care about that are mission aligned. You are clearly buying from us, so you support our product and our vision. And as a person who's spending money, you should help dictate where some of those proceeds go. So if they dedicate 2% of their profits to nonprofits and philanthropy, and I as a consumer get to say, whoa, I spent $1,000 on this brand. That means I have 1,000 points to help drive some of that revenue into my community to support organizations that are mission aligned. Then all of that is just gravy. Like that's perfect.
Yeah.
And so I do think that we have the opportunity to do some more of that. And you're going to probably see that as early as this year.
Yeah, it's so impressive to think about that level of impact and that level of connection, but also everybody's kind of still after the pandemic. I think people really realized what they were consuming at almost every degree of their life, and also having that attachment to it and attaching to a brand and a mission that has a certain value set. It's almost like it almost adds a characteristic to yourself and what you align yourself to. People are really, I think, considering that a lot more. So it's exciting to see that kind of that continued evolution. But let's go back to Bandwagon. Tell us a little bit more about the traction. How many companies have you been working with? How many brands have you helped support? And also, what's not only excited about the recent traction, but also the next coming year? What are you particularly excited about for 2023 and 2024 and the years to come?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at the pandemic and how it impacted the live event space and the experience space, it was really, really rough. 2020 was crazy. We ended up raising a pre-seed round in March of 2021 with the vision of creating a fan club and being able to connect fans and consumers with their favorite artists and entertainers. And so when we commercialized Poet, our product in November 2021, I mean, we really started off unpaid users or lower price users. So like our first customer was Chicago State. Shout out to them for signing on. They wanted to figure out a way to incentivize students to stay throughout the game. And so they created an NFT that was easy to collect, and they'd randomly put the QR code up throughout the game. And if you collected the QR code, then you'd be entered to win all kinds of cool stuff. So that was like free. We did that and said, we don't care, just do it so we can try it. That was November of 2021. And then we launched with Kelvin Beachum. He's an NFL player. And so he did an activation with us in December of 2021. Coming into 2022, we really wanted to up the ante and sign on some more folks. And so we were able to grow our revenues over 200%. We signed brands like Kids Co. We signed and worked with LifeWater and Pepsi. We worked with athletes like I said, Kelvin, as well as Brad Stuver from the Austin FC and Will Shipley. And so we're going on and on and on in that way. And so now as we get into 2023, our whole focus is saying, how do we take these products that we built and the infrastructure that we've provided and go beyond the pictures side of it?
Yeah.
And so being able to reward fans for their streaming habits and reward fans for their shopping habits or their attendance at conference based on ticketing, that's where we see a huge next step for us. And so that's where we're leaning into from an API and technology standpoint going into 2023. So it's been really, really exciting so far as we got to talk to streaming companies and artists, performing artists, and folks I was to on the radio, getting able to have those conversations during South by Southwest was actually really, really cool. So I think that we're right where we need to be right now to take advantage of this opportunity.
Incredible. And thinking about whether it's external or internal, what are some of the biggest challenges that Bandwagon faces today?
One of the biggest challenges that we face is being able to differentiate and separate ourselves from crypto. I gave a talk last night to a group of fellows for a nonprofit, and they asked me, said, hey, could you cover crypto 101? And my first thought was like, yeah, of course. And as I was getting there, I was like, oh, do you mean cryptography 101? Because that's what I know.
Yeah.
But they meant cryptocurrency 101, Bitcoin, Ethereum and such. And that's not really my lane. As I try and tell people, you've got the blockchain, and then that provides the opportunities of the things we're seeing with Web3 and the various applications. But on top of that, you've got the metaverse, you've got DeFi and cryptocurrency, you've got NFTs. And so we tend to play on the NFTs primarily on the idea of like being able to capture your experience, preserve your experience, share your experience to earn more curated opportunities to connect. And so that's where we go. And so one of the biggest challenges is being able to differentiate ourselves from crypto. So that's the biggest challenge. And then from there, it's really just trying to help educate people on what the opportunities are in front of them. Normally, folks come in and say, oh, we're going to disrupt X industry or Y industry. And that's not something that we ever want to promote. We want to make sure that people are able to say, hey, I want to build with my community. What's the best way to do that? And we think that with us, we'll be able to help them do that without any issues. And so those two are probably the biggest challenges, I'd say, to the space is helping people understand the opportunity that's in front of them, as well as separating ourselves from traditional cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. If everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for Bandwagon?
So long-term, we believe that we'll be able to create the digital universe for all fans to be able to interact with their favorite artists, not only thinking about content that other users are capturing and uploading. So Bad Bunny performed on top of a gas station in Puerto Rico. I wasn't there, but because someone was, I could see that perspective. I could see their pictures and be able to get that first person perspective. So that's awesome. But then what are the next things? Like, well, can we reward behavior and drive behavior like you talked about? Be able to influence that and connect. If you're a Bad Bunny fan, are you also a fan of this artist? And will that lead to opportunities where there are crossovers and covers and collaborations and remixes? Like that would be great because we'll have the data very clearly say this person is interested in this fan, this artist, as well as that artist. And then going further than that, I think the biggest thing is just making sure we're creating community around these groups. I think that when you're listening to a song on the radio, you're driving the car by yourself, you love the song, but you don't know the other people who do and how different your lives may be. And I think that those are the opportunities for us to use to start conversations, to bring people together. And so at the end of the day, I believe the fan club will be an opportunity for us to bring people together, not only virtually, but in real life, as artists and entertainers and brands can lean on our technology to ephemeral community, as we like to call it, a community of people that'll pop up and you'll never be able to get all those people together again. But for that moment in time, you had something really special. And that's something we're excited about leading and creating.
That's incredible. And I always love this next section. I call it my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and all right, what we get. This question, just to open it up, what's particularly hard about your job?
The hardest thing about my job is managing people, because when it comes to my management style, I tend to just let go. Once I delegate it, it's yours. And that means you let go of control. And so that means you may not get the output that you want, or you may not get the output when you want it. And so being able to trust others and really do it is a tough thing for a person that's got a big vision and you want to control everything. So that's something I work on, just being a better leader every day.
Yeah. A lot of the founders talk about time spent and where they're allocating it and prioritizing. So I like to ask this question. What's something that you spend too much time on that you would like to spend less on? And what's something that you spend little time on, but you would like to allocate more to?
I spend too much time in my CRM. I brought on a chief of staff. She's been amazing and is helping me do less of that. And she's doing more of it. And she's also doing more of my emails, which is great. And then something I should be doing more of is getting in front of customers. I love sales. I love being the person who tees up the conversations. I love being a strategist and helping them solve problems. And so that's something I'm trying to create more time to do.
Yeah. And thinking about what you're working on and kind of thinking about business model, was kind of the business and pricing model always the same? How do you, not only do you pay for the value of Bandwagon and what you're working on, but what are some of the creative ways that you kind of evolved the pricing and business model from when you started to where you are now? Or if you haven't changed, what made it so sustainable from the
So I
since
think in the
third
beginning,
Genesis?
it's really important to like try and figure out what's a price that people are willing to pay. So when we started with Chicago State, it was like, we just want to see if this works. We need to
Yeah.
test it. So we don't need money. We need to know if the product works. And then after we tested it and saw that it works, we're like, okay, cool. Will the next person pay us like $5,000? And then we were like,
Right.
okay, let's do $10,000. We did 10,000 for a while. And then we said, this is actually creating a lot of value. We started thinking about the departmental budgets that folks were operating in. And we're like, if we're talking to bigger brands, we needed to charge. And so then we're like, we're going to raise it to 25,000. Let's like see if this works and kind of put it out there. And so that was really, really important for us. In the beginning of Web3, like there is in the beginning of any adoption curve, there's always going to be a group of people who know more and therefore can charge for their expertise and there's more services based. That's what we've been able to lean on, is we're educating our customers. We're not only providing them the service and using our tools and platform, but they're also leaning on our expertise and getting a service. And so we've been able to make high margin revenue specifically due to that experience and expertise. And we're going to continue to do that because we see how the market is changing. And still a lot of people don't know what's going on, but we feel like we know where the puck is going. So we're going to keep skating towards it.
Yeah. And thinking about the technology piece, and one thing I'm curious about is how much are you impacted by, say, bad actors in terms of code or on-chain that isn't validated, that's fraudulent or things like that? Are you impacted heavily by that, or do you rely on Polygon and the companies that you're using to mint NFTs and create those smart contracts to be hyper focused on the security of the things that you're minting and things like that? How much does it impact you, and who do you rely on in terms of partners to be able to secure and validate that what you're putting on chain, the proof of experience, is actually authentic?
So we build all of our smart contracts. That's really important for us. We validate that the content that's being submitted is being submitted by the user that is uploading it. That's why we're building a mobile app to make sure we're getting device ID, geolocation, time, so we're not getting a bunch of people cropping other people's content, uploading it. And then if I say that this is Shakira, that content needs to go in Shakira's album if it is Shakira. If it's not Shakira and it's actually Lady Gaga, then we need to make sure we're doing the checks and balances to make sure the content goes to the rightful rights holder in that case. And so we do all of that. Of course, like anything, you're going to rely on some basis. So whether that's AWS that, is normally up, but on the random chance it goes down, a lot of the products that we use are impacted. We've probably seen that on Twitter, but we rely on Polygon because we mint there. And so being able to know that we have a redundancy set up, there isn't like an urgency to where it's like, if this wasn't minted at this exact time, there's a problem. We have the opportunity to be able to say, okay, we're going to batch mint these. It's better for the environment that way. There's no real rush. We'll still give you credit from when you click submit because they're recording that content. So we try to make sure we control as much of the process as possible while being collaborative with the folks who do a really great job at what they do. And that happens to be folks like Polygon.
Yeah. And thinking about this huge, obviously ChatGPT is out and people are talking about AI and thinking about just the scale at which Bandwagon can reach in terms of people submitting an immense amount of proof of experiences. Do you think about AI? Do you think about those types of mechanics to start minting these contracts at scale, validating this information at scale, and thinking about training a model that can help almost without having to have a lot of manual input? Do you think about that a lot? Is that incorporated in the long-term roadmap of the product, or have you thought about other ways to take on a scaling challenge?
Yeah. I mean, early on, I think that one thing I'll give a lot of entrepreneurs is that I think most of them think about scale too early. Right now, we have the amount of customers we have and we need to deliver for them. And so we don't get too distracted by scale right now. At the same time, we are mindful of the types of things we'll need to ask ourselves and then also answer. So some of our investors and advisors include the former chief technology officer and chief product officer of Roblox, or a person who led machine learning at YouTube, who helped organize information, right? And so being able to leverage their expertise and their experience will help us answer those questions when it comes to that point. But when it comes to like ChatGPT and Midjourney and some of these AI-based tools, we do think that our customers will want to use them. And I think about it from like an Instagram example. Huge fan of Instagram's creation story and the idea that people would share their pictures more if they thought they looked good. And so Instagram said, oh, we'll make filters to make people think their pictures look good. And so that's the same kind of thing we deal with for our product. We're asking fans to take pictures of Will Shipley and to submit them. But if they feel like their picture is too far away, or it's too grainy, or it's too blurry, they may not want to upload it. And so I
Yeah.
can absolutely see ourselves using a tool like a visual AI tool to help edit some of those pictures to where you feel more comfortable sharing them and you're more excited about sharing them or enhancing them in different ways. And so we've already been testing some of that internally, transparently, but right now we're really focusing on what we're doing, but we definitely see those tools creeping into our space and we're going to be prepared for them.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about the visual AI. I hadn't even thought about the impact of just like the quality aspect. And you're so right. The improving someone's creation or idea so that they don't have to go through the challenges of just the picture, lighting, exposure, all these different technical pieces, and helping them get to a certain point. I mean, it obviously just it supports that behavior even more, reinforces it even more.
Yeah.
I always like to ask this question because I love how founders extract knowledge out of anything that they ingest. Whether it was early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced and impacted you the most?
So the tipping point is probably my most impact, the book that's impacted me most, just because it really speaks to the collaborative nature of what makes something a thing, like what makes
Mhm.
something really tip. And it takes a lot of different people. So the tipping point for sure, 0 to 1 is really, really cool because you think about everyone's innovating and very few people are inventing. And so
Yeah.
you can truly invent and create something new. That's where you can stand out. One of my favorite quotes, the true sign of greatness is when all things before you are obsolete and all things after you bear your mark. And so we see more often than not in social media and other tech, there's a little bit of like copying and pasting of other features and functionality. And that's good. That's rewarding the person who invented it. And so we see a lot of that. So those are probably two of the books that really inspired my acumen and the decisions I've made to this point.
Amazing. And Harold, I know we're coming to the close of the episode, so I want to make sure we covered everything before we give your chance to give you your plugs and let us know where we can support you. But is there any question or anything I didn't ask you that you wish I did or that you would have liked to answer? Anything come to mind?
No, I think the conversation was great. I mean, the one thing I always try to make sure to share is that, everyone goes into this idea of like, we're going to disrupt healthcare, we're going to disrupt the music industry. And normally that doesn't happen because there are companies that make billions of dollars a year and there are executives that make millions of dollars a year that are
Yeah.
directly incentivized to make sure that you do not disrupt them. They have stakeholders and shareholders that make sure it doesn't happen. And so I encourage more founders to come from a space of collaboration instead of
Mhm.
competition. And I think in
Mhm.
that case, you will see more value being able to be created. So I definitely encourage that. And then lastly, I always like to make sure that folks, as they're learning things, even myself as a lifelong learner, I want to learn things as fast as possible and then help you learn them even faster. So if something takes me 2 months, I want you to take 2 weeks. And that's because from a mindset standpoint, I like to view knowledge more like a library and less like a vault. And so we need
Yeah.
to share more and we need to have that in circulation more and less guarded because I think that overall from a society standpoint, we'll all be better with information. And so we want to make sure we do more of that.
That's an incredible message, Harold. And obviously, I'm a huge supporter of that message. That's what the podcast is about, is the sharing of
Yeah.
information. I'm so happy to have you on the show, not only learning about your background, your experience, but how honestly you're viewing this whole fandom, this whole experience in a really unique way by offering a both collaborative experience between fans and artists, but also ways to incentivize them, ways to validate your experiences, and honestly, ways to connect on that experience that are extremely true, right? And this whole proof piece is so cool to think about and think about that experience being validated as you say, you can talk about it, but if it's not necessarily in stone somewhere, it's less valid in that sense. But Harold, I'm so
Yep.
excited to share this with the audience, and I'm so happy to have you on the show. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and thank you again for being on Behind Company Lines today.
For sure, man. This has been awesome. I hope that y'all will check out the a kid's book about blockchain that is now out, came out last week, where I want to help educate folks from 6 to 60 understand what blockchain is. So a kid's book about blockchain. But yeah, let's try and continue to share and collaborate with one another.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you. Give us your plugs. Where are your LinkedIn's? Where can we support you as a founder? Where we can support Bandwagon? Last
Sure.
little bit. I'm so sorry, but yeah, give us your plug.
Yeah. No worries. Please do not follow me or add me on LinkedIn. I likely will not ever see it. I'm scarred from corporate America. But if you do want to check me out on Twitter, feel free. Aside from talking about startups, I talk about angel investing, which I do a good bit, as well as community building. I love to cook barbecue and other food. So you'll see some of that. I'm a big New York Knicks fan, so you'll see me talking about that as well as college football. And then check out our products. If you've never made an NFT before and don't have any crypto, no worries. Go to poe.xyz. Take a picture of your coffee this morning or your cat or your dog or make a memory with a significant other, a group of friends, and make your first NFT. And you'll see how easy it is and what the future of content creation and ownership looks like, thanks to what we're building at Bandwagon.
Amazing. Harold, thank you again for being on the show. Such a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Y'all have a good one.